I was a junior in college and I was like, what the hell am I supposed to do? I don't want to be an investment banker. I don't want to be a financial planner. This is the only opportunity that's in front of me. So I kind of just threw everything at it. It was the frictionless experience of Airbnb that we wanted to bring to the antiquated, fragmented outdoor industry.
Well, I think it's interesting because your audience is probably low tech.
Oh yeah,
or very low tech, and so what you see is a need for how do we get these guys up to almost like digitalization, transformation, and help them do these things that they don't even know how to do.
Right. Mitra Miller threw out a stat, and it was like venture capital in the Houston area has grown 600% year over year. So venture capital investment in Houston, and I was like, whoa, wait a second, this might be something.
Welcome to another episode of Forging the Future. And today we have an exciting guest, Logan Meaux from Mallard Bay Outdoors. Mallard Bay is an innovative marketplace for booking guided hunting and fishing trips. Logan has a fascinating journey from his early career at Waitrapp to founding Mallard Bay and participating in the Softeq Venture Studio. Logan, it's great to have you on.
Yeah, great to see you, Chris.
Yeah, it's good to see you again. You've been keeping busy?
Oh, I think that would be an understatement. Now that we're in Houston full time, I think it's been like 90 to nothing, like ever since we moved. I mean, been here for a year.
Yeah. You started out in Louisiana, and you actually moved your headquarters here to Houston after the Venture Studio.
Yeah, not the official headquarters, but so we're still headquartered in Louisiana, but we're here in Houston, and I've
second headquarters.
Yeah, I've loved it every second I've been here. Like, I think anytime anyone's asked me that about Houston, I've always been like, I've loved it, and I have you to thank for that. Honestly, like, you were one of the reasons why we moved here. I mean, I hadn't even experienced the city before the Rice Business Plan competition.
Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of founders have mentioned is that they didn't know Houston was like this, right? Even you guys being as close as you are in Louisiana, right? Just how collaborative it is here in Houston, and once the founders get a little bit of exposure to that, so we're happy to have you. As much time as you spend in Houston, you got your cowboy boots on, so it sounds like you're getting. I don't know if you got your hat yet, but
Oh, I did at the Houston rodeo. I had to get the hat, so I got to experience that for the first time.
So you're a Houstonian now,
full-blooded.
So you've had an impressive career. Maybe you can start to share a little bit about your background and what initially sparked your interest in entrepreneurship.
Yeah. So I started Mallard Bay after tried to plan a trip with my dad and I to go on a guided duck hunt in Oklahoma. We ended up getting double booked. Supposed to be 3 days of hunting, turned to one hunt, 13 other hunters. It was a horrible experience. Didn't fire a single shot. And I was genuinely like, okay, this is weird. Like, what happened here? And previously I started working for my dad when I was 16. So I got like this really early exposure to a startup because, not every person's, father starts a food delivery company when, that wasn't a thing. And so started out as a delivery driver for him, then worked in customer success, and then ultimately ended in like operations and business intelligence. But I didn't think that I was going to start my own business until I had this experience. And I was kind of I was a junior in college, and I was like, what the hell am I supposed to do? Right? Like, I don't want to be an investment banker. I don't want to be a financial planner. This is the only opportunity that's in front of me. So I kind of just threw everything at it. But the first thing I did was like make sure that the market was actually an opportunity. And once I realized that $17 billion in the US and Canada each year is spent, primarily offline, cash, check in hand, I was like, okay, this is an opportunity. And then you look at the global market and it's like, wow, I don't know how, I can't unsee this anymore. So I got to do it.
So we've had Ashok Rao on the show, and he said entrepreneurship is a virus. That was his theory. So it sounds like you did catch the entrepreneurship bug. Because Waitrapp, actually, your dad started that, and it grew to be quite large and even IPO'd on the stock exchange. Right? So you got interested and decided to solve this problem that you had. It's basically like the Airbnb of sports trips or something, right?
That it was the frictionless experience of Airbnb that we wanted to bring to the antiquated, fragmented outdoor industry. And, not to say people hadn't tried to do what we're doing now before, but a lot of people had tried and failed. I think timing was a lot of it, because, pre-COVID, how could you get an outfitter on a Zoom call? Zoom kind of made that an opportunity. And so the fact that we started like right before then, you would think that starting December 26, 2019 to incorporate a company would probably be a pretty bad time, right? But it gave me the space I needed to start building the product, get the co-founders. It didn't move as fast as I wanted it to, as it normally does. But I had to learn the hard things myself. Like my dad really empowered me to like make my own mistakes, and he'd tell me what he might think I should do, but he'd let me make that mistake, even if it was spending his money and in a way in which he may not have thought it was a good idea. He'd let me learn that, hey, sometimes you gotta make the mistakes and fail. And that's where we transitioned from, just the marketplace to offering guide tech and that SaaS service. Like that was a big pivot for us. And, you would think that, oh, we'll stay focused on the marketplace and it'll work, but that just wasn't solving the customer's problem.
So you've pivoted a little from when you started, but let's back up a little bit. So did you start the company while you were in school still, or was after you school? So you were in college?
Junior in college.
You were a junior in college, and then at what point did you decide to go to the Rice Business Plan competition, which is the largest business plan competition in the U.S., and it was here in Houston. That's where we ran across you, I think in 22 or something like that.
It was an interesting kind of like path to get there, because I had just graduated, and we raised a small friends and family round to build out the product.
Graduated college?
Yes. So like my introduction into my career as a CEO was starting to raise money, and because that's really the only path we had. Like, we had funded the company up into that point. I think it was like, just a couple $100,000 to get the development going. But, by the time we were coming around to, I think it was 21 in the Rice Business Plan.
Probably, and time blurs 21 for me. Yeah.
Joel actually
messaged.
Joel, my co-founder, he messaged me one day and he was like, hey, like this Rice Business Plan competition seems like a really big thing. Like, should we apply? He asked me this 15 minutes before the deadline that evening. And I was like, no, we're not going to be able to do that. Like, I can't put in any of the time. He did all of the application, everything. And I didn't even know how big it was. And then, we get a text from one of our professors, congratulations, guys. And I was like, congratulations on what? And he was like, y'all were one of 42 companies selected for the Rice Business Plan competition. This is huge. And we were like, oh my God, like, what could this end up becoming? Little did I know what it would actually result in. But I think the thing that worked for us in the Rice Business Plan competition, we were just different. We had a product, we had traction, we had, a really solid pitch. And I wasn't even I wasn't in school, so I couldn't even do the pitch. I think I probably could have technically done it, and I've seen some companies do that, but I played by the rules.
So Joel did the pitching?
Joel and Wyatt, my other co-founder.
You met both of them in college?
So Wyatt and I worked at Waitrapp together.
Okay.
So Wyatt was my best friend from like 7th grade, and his dad was one of the first angel investors in Waitrapp, family friend. And so we started delivering driving at the same time. So we got to do customer success together and really got, now he leads our customer success team. And like we focus really heavily on bringing what we learned there because it was so good in the very start, or from the very start, because it's not easy to do customer success, but at least we have experience doing it. Like, I couldn't imagine not having that experience and understanding what it takes to make a customer happy, especially when it's revolving around their food and it didn't arrive on time, or they didn't get exactly what they ordered, or you're having to walk a 90-year-old woman on, through the process of how to make a food order for the first time, right?
So the Rice Business Plan competition, it really requires a lot of pitching, right? Had you had Joel and yourself done much pitch practice before the Rice Business Plan competition? We had
raised the small friends and family round. So we had, gotten our kind of introduction to pitching, but to say to kind of make it understand, we didn't know what we were getting into with the Rice Business Plan competition. It was a whole nother level of what a pitch is and how to make sure that you hit the time right, you hit all the points, you do Q&A well. And I don't think we had the pitch down until the night before. And then we changed the pitch because that's what everybody said to do. Iterate your pitch, take the feedback from the Q&A and iterate your pitch. And that's what actually, I think, resonated the most with all of the judges, was the fact that we had one pitch one day and then we changed it the next. And that actually spoke to the investors of, these guys are coachable. And I think that's what we bring to the table as founders the most, is just an ability to listen and understand that, everyone has their own opinions. Investors are going to tell you that, this is what I did and this is what you could do. But their job is not to tell you what to do. Their job is to tell you how they made mistakes and how you could avoid potential mistakes.
I think that was one of the things that attracted us. I mean, you were one of 2 checks we wrote that year to founders at the Rice Business Plan competition. And I just remember that the pitch was solid. And I did get the impression that you were coachable, and we actually had an opportunity to talk to you in between the pitching, right?
Right.
I think that's one thing that founders also didn't understand at events like that. Sometimes it's not the event itself, it's the networking capability, right? Or the ability to network. It's what happens in between the events, in the breaks, and then the drink breaks and everything else. Because that's how we got to know you and your team better, and then convinced us to go ahead and write a check.
I'll tell you how small the world is we met Craig. Craig was an LSU graduate and just grabbed us right after the pitch. Hey, I love what you guys are doing. Let me make a potential investor introduction. Not to you guys. This was like his other buddy, right? And that was kind of like enlightening me, like, oh wow, maybe this is really about networking. And then lo and behold, I mean, he got in Billy's ear and, he talked with you, and then we ended up meeting, outside of the actual pitch. And that was kind of like what brought us together, of like, this is not just a pitch competition.
Yeah, it is a small world. Craig's now president and CEO of Softeq.
Yeah.
It's been for over a year now. So also an investor in the venture fund. But yeah, I mean, I think that we had some founders when we were taking them to the Rice Business Plan competition go like, why am I here, right? And they're like, well, you're here to watch what a good pitch looks like, but also get out there and talk to all of the investors that are out in the lobby, standing around, talking and having a Coke in between pitch rounds and stuff. So that's interesting. So you participated in the Rice Business Plan competition with 40 other teams. You got a check from Softeq.
Right.
And then you also got some other checks there as well.
Yeah.
Right. And then you decided to come into the Softeq Venture Studio cohort. So maybe talk a little bit about how that, or what influenced your decision to do that.
Yeah. So while Softeq's check was the biggest check we got, we did end up taking home, I think, like the 3rd most prize money out, and we didn't even finish as a finalist.
Yeah, I think you were 8th or something.
Yeah. It was like we were the unofficial, like, kind of like fan favorite, just because we're a bunch of Louisiana boys.
With a good product.
Yeah, with a great product. Good at that point, not great. And so the thing that really drew me to like, okay, let's join the studio, like come back to Houston, was at the very beginning of the competition, like when everybody meets up for the first time. Mitra Miller threw out a stat, and it was like venture capital in the Houston area has grown 600% year over year. So venture capital investment in Houston. And I was like, whoa, wait a second, this might be something. So that got me interested. And of course, you guys putting y'all's money up and the conviction behind us, and like, what's a startup studio? I didn't know what a startup studio was. I'd heard of like accelerators and kind of like what it is. And I was like, oh, is this going to be a bunch of hoops to jump through? And like, are we going to like have to do, just a bunch of box checking, right? And it wasn't anything like that. So when we started to work with you guys and accept that money, that kind of like catalyzed our seed round. So, with you guys almost unofficially leading with a small check, a seed round that we ended up, matching with a lot of angels for $1.8 million, that really set us up to start growing. The product was already there, and then we just needed kind of the team. And so that's where we really started hitting our strides, was once we joined the studio, we started building out one of our bigger features that is really well used today. It's the calendar feature, right? You think that was something that we already had done, but it was so simple to the point where it wasn't solving the customer's problem. It was like, this is a way more complex problem than we initially expected. And so it was really going through the exercise of, okay, how do we not only like learn how to demo and get investors through the studio program, but how can we improve the tech, right? And then using the development resources that come with the program, really help to essentially align us on what the product needed to be.
And then what were some of the milestones after that you've achieved since then? Yeah,
so since then, I think at the time of the Rice Business Plan competition, we were at about like maybe 100 or so outfitters. That year, after we raised the seed round, we grew about 9x. So we went from 100 to 300 outfitters, right? And that was really huge. And then we followed that up with another year of 6x, right? So we were generating revenue before we even got there, right? So we had a little bit of revenue, just a little bit of revenue. And after that, it was really like we went from, we have a gross bookings number, right? So how many bookings run through the platform. So we went from, I think at Rice Business Plan competition was 300,000 to, what we finished 2023 at was 6 million in gross bookings.
Wow.
Right. So that was huge. And then through the program and building out the calendar, we realized that this was a SaaS tool for these outfitters. Like we could charge a subscription for them to use the calendar. And then, when they get bookings on the marketplace, that's great. That's added value. But that the marketplace wasn't solving 100% of the problem. It was only solving 15 to 20%. Why? Well, because outfitters have a lot of repeat clients, and those repeat clients drive their business forward. Well, they have to have a reason to use a software and a new payment system for those repeat clients, and that's why we created GuideTech.
And that was part of a pivot.
Yes, yeah.
And you figured that out after talking to these clients, or how did that epiphany come to you?
Yeah, so it was a combination between listening and talking to our customers. Talking is one thing, listening is another. So we listened to our customers, and we started working with a company called Bourbon Media, and they were doing some SEO for us, and that was great. But they had these really great websites that they were building for $40 a month, and we were like, well, that's interesting. Like maybe we could partner with these guys. Well, when we got into looking at partners, it was like, well, why partner when we could, you guys could join the team. And that was how we ended up creating the GuideTech offer. Because when you merge two companies, even if it's just 10 and 3, right? It was 10 people and 3 people at that point. There's this us versus them. And there's only, like, I couldn't even conceptualize a way to get rid of it other than just being like, guys, just Bourbon Media doesn't exist anymore. But it was coalescing behind the GuideTech offer of the combination of the marketplace and the SaaS tool and the services that they were offering as kind of like an additional kind of, call it lagniappe, as someone from Louisiana would say, to just accelerate a business and starting to look at them as small business owners that don't know all the fundamentals of business just yet. Right, and you start the education process and getting them used to using software. Even using QuickBooks for them is advanced, right? And now we're getting to the point where they're using QuickBooks a lot, so we want to have an integration, right? It makes sense. But unless you're listening to customers, you can't do that. So it's just conversations, and then the intuition is important. Like seeing, not always, customers don't always know exactly what they need, right? So you kind of have to make some bets, and some of those were things like. One of our features that allows you to create a similar invoice, right? It's basically just an invoice, but it's a really creative way of going about it. And then it makes it, the customer can check out like, boom, 2 clicks, right? Done. And so those were some really catalytic features that we offered at that time.
Well, I think it's interesting because your audience is probably low tech.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Or very low tech. And so what you see is a need for how do we get these guys up to, almost like digitalization transformation, and provide and help them do these things that they don't even know how to do.
Right.
That 3-person company, I mean, would you consider that like an acquisition? Or
Yeah, it was an
acqui-hire?
It was an
Yeah,
acqui-hire.
acqui-hire,
It was like very, very little cash, just because, one of the founders of the company, that was a little bit what he wanted. So he got a little bit more cash, and the other one got a little bit more equity, but it was all equity.
Interesting. Which also goes to show that you can be a 10-person company and make an acquisition that is strategic, and you can also do it without a huge check.
Yeah. Well, think of how hard partnerships are, right? Every founder wants to do the next great partnership, but they take so long and they're so hard. And sometimes it's better to just be like, guys, let's just do this together. Like, instead of doing through a partnership, like where there's rev share and all that crap to go through, right? Like, just make it simple. And I think more founders could do that at the early stages, but you also have to be savvy with the cap table. Like, that's a big part of it. Is like, do you even have an LLC? I mean, like, do you have a C Corp instead of an LLC? Yeah. Like, all of those things founders just kind of like forget about, right? And they want to just make progress through these strategic partnerships that just don't turn into anything at an early stage.
So backing up just a little bit, that 1.8 million round, did you have Houston investors in that round?
Yeah, so we had several angels from Houston, Michael and Jamie Simchick, which are LPs in the Softeq fund. We did demo day, and
they invested.
And they invested. I thought you had known that, but I didn't know that you didn't know that.
I was happy to see it.
Yeah. No, I mean, it was great. It was actually like why we kind of became like one of the Softeq studio success stories, is because we were so happy with having did the program in the way in which y'all intended it to be. And that was what resulted at the end of it. It's like, we got additional investment, right? We were able to close this round. It was a catalyst. It really was.
Perfect. And now you've gone on to raise an additional fund, funding round, Series A.
Yes.
And how much was that?
Yes, so we raised $4.6 million in the Series A.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's not the quite milestones that VCs have said, oh, it's $10 million or it's a Series A. So it wasn't quite the goalpost that got moved, but it's
well, in this economic environment, I call that a win.
Yeah.
You got almost $5 million for your startup for a Series A, and raised almost $2 million before that. So kudos to you and the team.
Yeah, thank you.
It sounds like you're off to the races.
Yeah, I think one of the things that had to change in our story when we were raising the Series A, like we raised it for 12 months. We were raising capital for it. I mean, we were talking to you at the beginning. And then you guys let us in on the fundraising environment ain't great right now, guys. The raising a fund is hard right now. So, we were after it for 12 whole months, 250 plus investor meetings. And ultimately, we met the right one. And that was the important thing is, we talked to a ton. And even at the end, like now that we had this investor that really put the term sheet up and signed it, then it's like everyone else wants in. But that's how you could screw your own deal by trying to bid up the valuation and stuff like that. We were just very happy to do a deal with Houston-based investors that had built and scaled a company already. It wasn't just a fund, they were operators. And that was what was important to us. And we knew that if we got operators involved from an investor standpoint, that we knew what to do. Like we can be coachable. We can involve them in the way in which it's not the disaster that it sometimes turns out to be. And that was like really exciting for us.
Why do you think investors invested in you and Mallard Bay? I mean, what was resonating with them at that point that they're writing, a total of almost $5 million?
I think above all else, I think the story of what we were doing and how we changed from what we were initially doing into why, telling them why that wasn't solving the problem and what we're doing now, highlighting that recurring revenue stream, and then also telling them and showing them the path to profitability and helping them to understand that this is not just another startup that wants to burn a bunch of cash and go out of business. Not that startups want to do that. It just happens all the time.
So they saw the traction.
Right.
And then they also saw the total accessible market as pluses from what you pivoted into.
Yeah. And we had an enhanced team at that point too. So Manny he was actually working as a fractional CTO for us at the time, but he was my dad's co-founder, his technical co-founder. So he came on as our CTO. We still have our technical co-founder who's now an IC, like incredible, brilliant coder, but that CTO role, he wasn't going to be a manager. And Manny really came in and blew up the entire dev process to like where the throughput is, through the roof, right? And it's all in-house. And that's what really made me excited about, okay, once we get the money, we know what to do with it and we know how to make the product better. We know where to spend. And telling that story was like a really important part. We also had a professional like do our pitch deck. I don't know, it's out of every investment I've made in some sort of form of services or whatever, it's the highest ROI I've ever received. I mean, you pay $15,000 to have someone build you a beautiful pitch deck. You really hope that you at least get that $15,000 back, but to return $4.6 million on a $15,000 investment, if you ever need help, that's pitch genius.
Pitch genius is who you went with?
Yeah.
I was going to ask. Well, I think that's another thing that founders think. I've had founders balk at spending, $200 on a domain name, right? It's like, well, don't name your company after something you can get on GoDaddy for $7.99. This is something you're going to live with for 10, 12 or more years, make that investment. But I think there are, it's probably touch and go sometimes on, pitch deck companies because founders are desperate for that. But also 15,000 is a lot of money, right? And
we were fortunate to have that, right? And to be in a position to where taking that bet on the pitch deck was not like running us out of money. Like we still had cash, right?
Sure.
We weren't out of money.
Yeah, but I mean, recognizing the ROI of the potential investment, like, hey, we're trying to raise $5 million off of this deck. Maybe we should make sure that we have a really great deck.
Maybe me and Joel in Google Slides on version 85 of our pitch deck. That was the same deck we used at the Rice Business Plan competition 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago at this point, or whatever. That was like kind of one of those things where I was like, yeah, maybe we're being stupid about this. Like we just need to change.
What do you think was impactful about the change that they made on that pitch deck? Was it just it looked prettier, had better pictures, it had less words, it changed the focus from client pitching to investor pitching?
Storyline.
Yeah. Storytelling. Okay.
And going through the process of giving them our best pitch without a deck, telling them the story and letting them make the deck flow in the way that we tell the story to the best of our ability. And that was part of the process is like, they have this really good, like it's a sprint oriented process. Like you pay per sprint. And so like the first part of it was like getting all the information. And then, we gave them a lot of assets like from the creative side to make it, prettier. But at the end of the day, it told a story without us being there. And we also got 3 different versions of it. That I didn't even know was a thing until we met them. It was like, oh, you need a teaser deck, you need a reading deck, and you need a pitch deck. And I was like, what the hell? I didn't know that. I was like, well, certainly can't make 3 versions of our deck, so please help.
Yeah. I mean, it's true. I mean, it's a lot of companies just use one deck. And sometimes it's like, well, like you said, a teaser deck. Or here's a deck, works great when, hey, Logan and Joel are doing the presentation. But, if they're not and you're just reading it, how does that deck look?
Right.
Did you ever look at some of those lists of like, here's a list of 40 decks that have raised, $1 billion between them, right? Did you ever look at those? Oh
yeah. I mean, like I said, we were on version whatever. I mean, like I said, I use 85 as a joke, but
it probably was.
We the first deck that I had to look at was my dad's pitch deck, and like it was. I mean, old PowerPoint and like the square, it wasn't like the portrait version. It was like the square version. And like, that was his deck that they raised 700,000 on. So that was like our starting point of like, okay, let's make it look like this, but obviously a little bit better. And then it became something much greater than we thought it would be. Like it became of greater importance, right? Because it had to speak to the investor when we weren't there, right? It had to get them interested to get a meeting, right? It had to be passed around. And if at the very least, the thing the investor says is this is the best pitch deck I've ever seen, that's a good sign. That's a good start.
Well, has there been any resistance to this? I mean, what do you think the impact of, these technologies as far as transforming kind of a non-tech industry like, the outdoor adventure industry? I mean, is it having an impact? Is it being adopted?
Yeah. It's been challenging. Like I wouldn't sit here and say that outfitters are the most tech savvy and they just like turn it on like that. It requires a hands-on onboarding process. For us, product-led growth does not exist right now. It could never exist. We don't know. And that will take time.
Does that mean you're having to educate these outfitters and what is possible with your technology?
Yes, right.
They don't just say, hey, we need a SaaS system,
Yeah, no, at the, like I said, at the very least, the most advanced it gets is using QuickBooks, or they're duct taping and chewing gum a Shopify store to be able to take payments online, or they're still taking cash or Venmo, things like that. And it's hard to get them to change their ways because they get so used to doing it, even though the new way saves them X amount of time. How do you communicate that to them?
Is that the main thing? I mean, the new way saves them time, but what else?
Time and money. Time is money. But
why the money part? I mean, it sounds like originally your pain was you just had a terrible experience, right? Did you get refunded for that trip or no?
No. That's mainly because there was no intermediary in between. So there's nobody to even go to about, hey, like, how could we make this right? So while we become the trusted kind of like customer service aspect to, hey, if your customer experiences any challenges, we're there to help. But we also have our account managers who are there to help the outfitter use the product. And sometimes they're using the account managers just like they would a bookkeeper or a executive assistant. Hey, XYZ called me, can you check them out over text? And then, obviously we do that. And that's what got us started, right? And then slowly over time, we've had outfitters just do it themselves, right? And when you look at our top 30 power users of the product, they provide 80% of the revenue and essentially have made the product themselves into what they wanted it to be because it didn't start out that way.
Tell me a little bit more about the selling process. So it's not like you're just running Google AdWords and expecting people to come to you and say, I need an outfitter, right? So, I mean, you're having to do direct reach out to these, like, database of outfitters and an account manager reaching out. And then, how long does that take before you close a deal?
So our sales process typically takes 2 weeks, and that's pretty good. But it's come a long way. So it starts with a discovery call, either cold or warm outreach based on, if they're an MQL. Like if they've come in, we do have inbound, and we have had success on organic and social that really kind of got us started. But now that paid acquisition is starting to become a thing. It's starting to make more sense from the sense of now that we know when we get an MQL, we know what our schedule rate is, we know what our no-show rate is, we know what our close rate is, and if someone shows up to a demo, we know what goes in the top to get out the bottom, right? And that is still something that you kind of got to dial that in. This is the point where we're dialing that in. So from the process of, so it's a discovery call and then a demo and then a contract. We're actually removing the contract portion because it was causing friction. They were getting confused. The ability to read the contract just wasn't the right way. And I started to look at it and I was like, maybe we don't need contracts. And maybe that builds trust with the customer, right? So it's like, try that. And that's how we've gotten our sales process to the point where it is, but it's not anywhere where it needs to be. Like it's got to level up. Each month it has to level up. And that's really important.
Any advice to a founder that's trying to disrupt a similar industry, like a non-tech related industry like yours, or an outdoor industry?
Yeah, I think I lost my train of thought when I was explaining the 30 power users and what was the actual catalyst that got them to be a power user in person, right? And that's challenging, right? To build an in-person relationship with a customer in this day and age is way more challenging than it used to be, because you could be starting a company in Vancouver, Canada, and targeting Southwest Louisiana as your target market, right? I wouldn't necessarily recommend that, but some people are doing that. And if I'm a founder and if I'm in that situation and I'm struggling, it's got to be boots on the ground. That's the thing. That most people will totally ignore in today's way of doing business. Because of virtual, that in-person has gained value, that it makes more impact on the customer.
So are you getting to these locations with people and being in person?
Mm-hmm. You have to. It's got, we do trade shows, event, that is one of our main ways of getting in the face of not only brands in the industry, but just outfitters in general, or guides, right? That has been really good. And then essentially doing what we're doing now is like where the account manager goes and meets with them in person. So say they come in the regular funnel and there's no in-person touch point. It's now a point of like, we got to build that in-person relationship somehow. So yeah, we have a budget for that, and it was part of the plan all along. So it's not like we learned, we got to go to these outfitters now, like, and spend the money to go there. It's like, no, that was baked into the budget. This is part of the process.
So you have people in cars and planes, or what's going on with that?
During our busy season, like off season, it's not as beneficial for someone to go visit an outfitter. It can be, it can. But during the season of when things are going on, sending those people out there to have a touch point and see the operation and how it works, and potentially even identify problems or room for efficiency, just to even better communicate to the sportsman, like, what does this experience entail? It actually gives us more conviction about this is the right customer, but it also gives that customer that extra, like, wait, they care and they show up and they actually are genuinely likable people.
Well, it's an interesting insight, because you're basically saying it is like a non-tech, non-digital industry, and in order to sell to that industry, you have to build trust, and you build trust by meeting them at their own level, which is a relationship.
Yeah.
Anything else that you see that's technological, that's maybe shaping the industry, the outdoor industry experience?
Yeah, I think there's somewhat a lack of community. I think the multi-tenanting on social media platforms has kind of like created a kind of like a void of, like, if someone wants to get into the outdoor industry, where do they go, right? Like, you can get fishing and hunting content on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube by just searching for it, right? But is that the place that those people want to get that type of content? Who knows? I think it'll move a different direction, but I think the way I look at it is bringing all of the stakeholders into one place around one common thing, which is we love the outdoors, right? And if you can build that place where they're going to be, that's where the next $1 billion hunting and fishing outdoor company can come from. But it takes a while to get there. You can't just like do that. It's a slow process of really building trust and community with your customers.
Where is the community online for the outdoor industry? Is it the Facebook? Is it TikTok? What is it?
So,
are you doing anything on TikTok?
We have a TikTok.
You do have a TikTok. Okay.
Actually, fun fact: we just got denied our TikTok ad access because of the fact that we're associated with firearms. Somehow.
Oh, really? Oh,
right.
Okay.
So, you start to see things like that happen, and it's like, well, are these platforms the space for this, right? And what happens next, right? Like, is that the writing on the wall for something that's going to come in the future? Maybe, but they're Facebook groups, right? Like, what Facebook group? Yes,
Yeah.
Facebook groups, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. Like just normal Facebook. And those are the platforms they're using today, and like how we're reaching them. Where that's going to go, who knows?
Is Facebook ads working for you? Do you do any ads?
Yeah, Facebook ads are testy. I think Facebook can potentially be a little bit disingenuous with their numbers. I think that there's a lot of pressure on them to keep their ad platform at the quality it was.
What is working better? I mean, as far as advertising for you?
Doing this and cutting it up. No, that's one way we're trying, getting more into short form human content. The way the outdoor industry was, and what we did previously was we were putting a lot of effort into like high octane, really good like clips of the hunting experience, but no real human interaction in the content. Yeah. And now, like, it's kind of like always lagging. It's like you saw like all business content go to human interaction, right? It's no longer okay to post just like, a picture on your Instagram or a picture on your LinkedIn, right? Like, I mean, you can do that, but it's not as effective as speaking to the customer, like you and me talking, having a conversation, but you're talking to the camera. And that's a big challenge to overcome. So if you think about it as a lagging indicator, it's like it's all moving that direction. It's like the outdoor industry is just now starting to move into the human content, podcasting, things like that. You have groups like Meat Eater. They have 26 podcasts, right? And they have this huge YouTube channel, and they're distributing all this content. And that's how they're making money, right? And then they're acquiring other brands. And those opportunities for us are really interesting because that's potential acquisition opportunities. There's, a couple, I say a couple. There's like one unicorn in the space on X Hunt, and that's the mapping app that every outfitter uses, every guide, every DIY sportsman uses to find out where they're going to go hunt or get landowner access, that stuff. So it's been interesting to see how hot the space has gotten in the last year, and I kind of would take some credit of being like, I think something's happening here. Like there's only been a couple of big acquisitions in the space over the last, like Fair Harbor was acquired by Booking.com for $250 million. Resdy was acquired by private equity for $120 million. And then that's really it. And those are both reservation platforms. And so where do we fit in that space? Well, we're vertical. They were horizontal, and we just want to stick in the vertical of hunting and fishing.
I see. Well, Logan, thanks for forging the future of outdoor tech. I do have some socks for you.
Oh, socks.
I've got my Texas socks on today.
I've got my Moscow Mule socks on.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Well, here's some. Maybe you don't have these.
Hey, there
you go. I like big bucks.
Yeah, I like that. I do.
Some
I
camo
do like
socks.
big bucks.
Yeah. Well, thanks for being on, and good luck to you, and congrats on your success.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Appreciate it.